another episode of Falcon Quick Tips. So in this Quick Tips, we're going to be covering candlesticks and the override. So what is the override? The override, quite simply, is understanding that when you're taking these trades and looking at these particular structures, we're not always going to get that picture perfect setup. And a lot of the times traders, they hesitate in certain types of situations because they're waiting for the perfect type of setup. What the override simply is your backup plan. If you're looking for A, B or C or D, etc., and looking for the market to tick a certain criteria for your analysis, there needs to always be an override. As we know, the market always isn't picture perfect. Sometimes it's a little bit messy. And what I found with my experience, and a lot of the guys and girls in the community, is that override is a key component and it's very essential to have within your trading plan. So let's dig into that and show you exactly how simple but effective it can be. So building on patterns within patterns and multi-touch identification, let's take a look at this particular structure on pound dollar. Understanding that we are looking at this particular structure with the bigger double top, the ascending channel, the pattern within the pattern, the multi-touch identification, and we understand that with these particular structures have a very high probability when they break impulsively, they have a very high probability they're going to be at the beginning of the correction. We have a 90% probability that we'll get to the beginning of the correction, which, as you can see, we surpass that very easily. So it comes at no surprise that these overall structures are playing out as expected. More importantly, by understanding the high time frame structure, we're anticipating that we want to sell from here for a minimum to this area and potentially a lot further. So by knowing that, on the 1 hour chart, as we dig deeper, we're looking for reversals and we're looking for continuations. Now, understanding that the continuations and reversals, they're not always going to be that picture perfect setup, and this is where the override comes in. So let's go back to the 1 hour and take a look at what that actually means. So if we move over to the 1 hour chart on this particular structure, let's take a look at this area. So building on our overall analysis of this particular structure, you can see that we have the pattern within the pattern here, and that we can see within the area that we have our multi-touch identification, and as we build our way down, this particular structure that we're focusing on. So now we want to build on the position and look to get in as much as possible. Let's take a look at what the override could be. Now, understanding this continuation pattern, what ideally we would want is something like this, an impulse, and then we would have a correction, either a tight flag continuation and a break to the downside, but then sometimes we get deeper versions of them, which they're slightly more complicated, but they're still very profitable. And what you can see in this type of situation, we get the impulse, it moves up, and it gives us more of an arc type formation to then break to the downside. So it's just a deeper, bigger structure. So how do we apply the override to this? Well, as you can see in this type of situation, when we look into it and we zoom right in, you can see ideally what we would like in this area is for price to move up correctively, because we know that the nature of the market, the corrective nature, is the most important. If we had price moving up within this type of nature all the way to the top, it'd be a very simple sell. It gives us a very powerful idea to take a risk entry opportunity. But in this case, you can see that we're looking at the overall continuation. We have the double top, but notice how this isn't the most corrective. We have 2, 3 impulsive candles, and then it slows down for a little bit within this area. Now, because I'm focusing on this as the bigger, higher time frame structure, I already know that the override will be that the high time frame structure is suggesting that it's coming to the downside. If this was just a short-term trade and it was very, very impulsive, it would be unlikely that I would take the trade. Let's say if this was just a 2-to-1 on a different pair like Euro CAD, for example, and there wasn't a higher time frame structure to support it, it's very unlikely that I'll take the trade. But because we've just built on our analysis on the high time frame structure, I'm looking to get into these continuations as much as possible because there is so much room to go. So by looking at it, that's how you filter out what are the best opportunities. And as you can see, it's quite impulsive here. So what is the override? So this is where candle shape formation comes in. Remember, structure first and candle shape is always secondary. So in this type of situation, we have an element of an evening star. And in the foundation series where we cover the candle shape formations, you can see how powerful they really are, and it gives us an opportunity to really take advantage of a risk entry. So by looking in this area, we're scouting this, we're looking at it, we know there's a double top, we've got the arcing nature, and the override is this. This is impulsive, so what's the override? It's the evening star type formation. Now, normally with an evening star, what you'll get is more of a doji at the top. But as you can see in this case, the wick is a little bit longer. It's more of a hanging man type formation. But nevertheless, this is a very good override candle formation for us to look to take the trade. So quite simply, what we do is add to our portfolio is that we're looking for the continuation, we're looking for a double top, the arcing nature is perfect, potential corrective nature would be even better for us to take the sell. But if that doesn't happen, what is the override? And this is exactly what it is. This is where traders often overlook this, waiting for the picture perfect trade, and then they see this happen and they think, how could I have got involved in it? This is, through my experience, what really helped me is the override. So what we do in this type of formation is we're looking to take this evening star type pattern on the double top on the break of here. This is how we take this structure. So quite simply, you can be taking this trade like this, conservative. At the top, you can either have a 30 pip stop, maybe 35 to be conservative. This allows us to take a risk entry opportunity, and then we're targeting the bigger structure on the higher time frame pattern. As you can tell, at the beginning of the correction, this is where we're targeting. So what this enables us to do, if we're already looking for selling opportunities at the top and we're building on this, then we can have our target, our bigger target, which just lines up with the intersection of the trend line area for 14.5%, which comes at no surprise why we capitalized on these opportunities within the Falcon community. So what this enabled us to do is that where other people see mess, we still see opportunity, and that is the true game changer. And if we apply that to the particular structures, we can take it one step further and say, well, let's say you didn't really understand that at the beginning stage and then you learn from it. What can you do in the future to then still take advantage of that? Well, as we build on the trade here, you can see that we get another type of situation. We can see the overall structure is impulse, correction, impulse, correction as a continuation. Now this is just another larger structure, almost a slightly bigger version of what we're looking at here. So by understanding that part, what we can do is take a look at the override again to see if that helps us. So imagine looking at this particular structure. We know it's a continuation pattern. We have the corrective nature here. We come back down one more time, and this was possible to keep going. But what happened is that we know it's possible to come back up for one more touch. So what have we got here? We've come back up quite impulsively with the impulsive candles, but then what the override kicks in, the only time the override kicks in is when we have a higher time frame structure to support that. That is where you want to use it the most. If you're just using it on any particular pattern, the probability won't be as high. It's still good, but remember, it will be higher when you have a bigger structure to support it. So by looking at that, we can see this overall impulsive nature here. So it's moved up quite impulsively, with a tiny little slowdown, and then our override is that we have the double top here, and then we have this high test formation candle. So what we'll be doing is taking this at the top. So you'd be setting your order after that, and then taking that to the downside. So about 35 pip stop would be more than enough, and then you're building on that trade to target to the downside. So as you can see, it enables you to get into the trade for another 7.5%, potentially 8%. By understanding that, this is why this is a game changer, because it's exactly where others don't see opportunity is where we see opportunity. So this is the override, and the only reason when you consider this, as you can see how we've built that, is because the importance of looking at the overall structure and the candle shape as secondary. A lot of the times we're going to get very, very picture perfect type corrective nature setups, but some of the biggest trades, they won't always give us that picture perfect setup, and the market can be quite ugly at times. So we need to learn how to trade that, which is exactly why in Falcon it's so crucial to understand it. And as you can see, we actually do get that kind of evening star type formation where you have the impulsive candle, the doji, and then the impulsive candle to the downside. Granted, this one is a little bit larger than the body of this green candle, but overall it still has that overall formation to it, and as you can see, played out nicely. So this is where the override comes in and is such a key component within your trading plan. And if we take that one step further and have a look at this particular structure right at the top, you can see by building on what we know, we have our patterns within patterns. So we have our ascending channel within the ascending channel, and then we have our multi-touch identification. So 1, 2, 3, and then we have our overall bigger top on the daily, so this big double top on the daily at that intersection. We have the upper trend line here, and then when we go back to the 1 hour chart, you can see we actually have not so much an override in this situation because the trade is already there for us, but we do have that candle shape formation is where we can bring that in. So we're already looking at this as an ascending channel within an ascending channel to take it on the break. So what we would have is our trend line here, but to get in earlier, you may be getting in right at the top of the double top, which is the override in this type of situation. So you're either taking it on the break or you're taking it literally right at the top as the override because you have everything else to support what you're doing. So two types of situations it enables you to get in. And as you can see, the type of pattern that it formed was the impulsive candle, the doji, and then the impulsive candle to the downside, which is another evening star type formation. So it comes at no surprise when we start to combine all of those factors. You can see how we're using simplicity and building on it. And the reason why this is an absolute game changer, because what it says to your psychology is that I don't always need the market to do something to satisfy me. What you're actually saying is, this is what the market does, this is what is possible within the market, and if this happens and I don't get the picture perfect setup, what am I going to do about it as a backup plan, as your override, to then be able to still capitalize onto the market? And the inceptions of the patterns within patterns, if we actually zoom out here on the daily chart, you can then see that we have patterns within patterns within patterns. And when we look at this particular structure, we're actually looking at this whole pattern as one big ascending channel, and then we have an ascending channel here with multi-touch, and then we also have that tiny little ascending channel within an ascending channel. So as you can see, when we have patterns within patterns within patterns, and then we combined all of those key components and seeing how simple it really is, you can see why it comes at no surprise when we capitalize on the full move and we really take advantage of what the market has to offer. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Quick Tips. It's been an absolute game changer for me and so many within the community, and you can see how powerful it is to have that override within your plan. And I cannot wait to see you in the next episode of Quick Tips.